So kicking off at number 5, we have Postal 2. Released in 2003 as the synonymous sequel to 1997's original Postal, this game labels itself as a black comedy first-person shooter video game from creators running with scissors. Now, in all fairness, the reason this game is at number 5 is because I'm personally unsure whether it deserves such backlash. Yeah, it's bad, it's in poor taste, but the game's creators clearly marketed it as a niche game, with the tagline, "It's only as violent as you are." Nevertheless though, in 2004, New Zealand banned the game due to its gross and abhorrent content, with Australia soon joining suit, banning it due to excessive abhorrent content. They like that word. It went on to be banned in Malaysia, Germany and Sweden, although some of them would be later rescinded. In the game, you play the role of the postal dude, an everyday run-of-the-mill trailer park denizen who has to complete a certain number of tasks as peacefully or violently chaotic as the player chooses to. Religious cults, cannibalistic butchers, Al-Qaeda, Gary Coleman, it's got it all.
Number 4 on this list is Fear 2 Project Origin. Australia has once again stepped in and shut this video game down. What Culture says, Australia's OFLC banned horror FPS Fear 2 Project Origin from sale in the country due to its extensive violence and unforgiving tone. Their statement cited numerous examples of the player's ability to inflict dismemberment, slit throats in close up, and spray blood across the screen, while expressing how disturbed they were by the game's enhanced graphics and realistic behavior of human and mutant foes. What exactly defines a realistic mutant? I don't know. Released years before Australia finally instituted the R18+ certificate, Fear 2 was refused classification as an MA15+, leading to its de facto banning. Many commentators pointed out the OFLC's bizarre hypocrisy towards horror-themed games though, given that more action-centric violent games like Grand Theft Auto and Gears of War had faced little resistance releasing in Australia. Regardless of the GTA release and other games that Australia has allowed to be played in their country, this one was not allowed. I think that because they ended up going in this direction, it should speak to how graphic this video game actually is. It might not have the same sort of dark murder simulator themes like some of the other sick video games on this list that we're going to get to, but apparently the gore is just brutal. I've never played any of these video games before, so if you're someone who has, then similarly to the last one, please comment down below your thoughts, and if you think it should have been banned everywhere, let me know. Number 3 on this list is Outlast 2. There are a lot of things about this game which make it one to avoid. What Culture says, despite the introduction of the R18+ rating in Australia in 2013, that still wasn't enough for first-person horror sequel Outlast 2 to be granted a release, at least at first, with the ACB taking massive umbrage with the game's implied sexual violence. Outlast 2 is certainly full of grotesque and, at times, envelope-pushing imagery, though given that no other major gaming market in the world followed Australia's lead, eyebrows were immediately raised by fans and, indeed, developers Red Barrels themselves. Hilariously, it turned out that Red Barrels had accidentally sent the ACB footage from the alpha version of the game, which contained especially transgressive content which the developer had already decided not to include in the final game. In a happy ending, the ban was overturned a mere 2 days later when Red Barrel sent in amended footage of the final build, which was granted a release under the R18+ banner. Regardless of whether the game eventually got released or not, it still is one of the most grotesque ones out there. It also has to make you wonder, what was in that first version that didn't ever get put out? What could have possibly made that so bad that the own creator didn't even want it in their own game? We may never really know, which in this case, probably for the best. Number 2 on this list is Manhunt 2. As if the original Manhunt wasn't bad enough, they decided to make a sequel to it. What Culture says, Rockstar Games is no stranger to courting controversy, and after the original murder simulator, Manhunt, was deemed injurious to the public good by New Zealand authorities while being incorrectly blamed for a high-profile UK murder, the publisher only doubled down on the transgressiveness for the sequel. console. Less than a month before Manhunt 2's planned release, it was refused classification by both British and Irish rating boards, with the BBFC citing its unremitting bleakness and callousness of tone, sustained and cumulative casual sadism, and unrelenting focus on stalking and brutal slaying. They also claimed the release posed unjustifiable harm risks to both adults and minors. Clearly, the panic among uneducated censors and fearmongers was that Manhunt 2's more realistic murder sequences might inspire the young and the vulnerable, who frankly shouldn't be playing the game anyways, to then take up arms after playing it. The US ratings body ESRB meanwhile issued it with an adults-only rating, and given that Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony categorically don't allow AO games on their consoles, it meant that Manhunt 2 was effectively also banned in the US. The game was eventually released in America several months later after Rockstar undertook comprehensive edits to the game's violence, namely blurring brutal executions or removing them entirely, while also ditching the rating system for kills. I love video games, guys. I do. And I love a good shoot 'em up game as well. Like, they're a lot of fun. But do we really need to have a murder simulator game? Like, is that actually something that we need in the world? The fun part about shoot 'em up games is the whole competition of trying not to get killed, trying to avoid dying and completing the objective. The fun part isn't the actual murder itself. And a game like this, that's basically what they're promoting. I think Rockstar makes some incredible games. The GTA franchise is amazing, and Red Dead Redemption 2 was incredible, but I think that they missed the mark on this one. And finally, number 1 on this list is Hatred. I had never heard of this game before making this video, and honestly, I could have gone my whole life without knowing it existed. Gamers Decide says Hatred is a game in which you play as the antagonist. The game features the antagonist going on a murdering crusade with only one goal in mind: to kill as many people as he can. Obviously, this did not go over so well with a lot of people. Hatred was banned in Germany for being too gruesome. This is to be expected since Germany doesn't really approve of these kinds of games, especially when the only goal of the game was to spread hate and murder as much as you can. However, interestingly enough, it was even banned from Steam for a short period after it was released, and it's still one of the games that are not allowed to be streamed on Twitch. Literally, guys, you still can't even stream this game. That's how bad it is. I mean, it's basically just a mass murder simulator, which in all honesty, I wouldn't even want to play. In fact, I don't even know why this game was made in the first place. Like, in what way could playing a game like this possibly be fun? You would have a hard time even finding a way to play it now, but I highly recommend just avoiding it altogether.
Starting off this countdown, we have Phantasmagoria. Phantasmagoria is a point-and-click adventure horror game that was released in 1995 by Sierra Online. The game follows the story of a woman named Adrienne Delaney. She's a writer who moves into a remote mansion and later falls victim to supernatural forces. This game was banned for a number of reasons. Number 1, it consists of a number of very gory, violent scenes. In one scene, a man gets bludgeoned to death. In another scene, a pendulum cuts a woman's head in half. The most controversial scene, though, was a scene where Adrienne gets taken advantage of by a man possessed by a demon. It's really messed up. Before the game was even released, CompUSA, the nation's largest discount computer retailer, told Sierra that they would not stock the game. Sierra responded by saying they would include a password-protected censoring option within the game to, tone down the graphic content. CompUSA was still not on board with this. Then, when the game was released, it was banned and made illegal in Australia.
Coming in at number 4, Standoff. Yeah, this game just sucks. Standoff, previously titled Active Shooter, was developed by Russian video game creator Anton Maryevsky and publisher Peter Berudyev. In my opinion, it's a game in incredibly poor taste, lack of foresight, and just a straight up terrible title. The game depicts a school shooting where the player takes the role of either an active shooter or a SWAT member responding to the event. Players have an arsenal of guns, grenades, or knives, and a civilian police death tally that racks up on screen. The game attracted some serious controversy controversy in May of 2018 after parents of the Stoneman Douglas High School shooting victims campaigned against the game online, a petition which attracted over 100,000 signatures by the time of the game's cancellation through Steam. Valve, the company behind Steam, later went on to update its publishing policy and called the game's creator a troll with a history of customer abuse, publishing copyrighted material, and user review manipulation. Nice work there, bud. Next up at number 3, Hatred. If we're talking pure disturbing content, then Hatred is pretty high up on this list. Developed and published as the debut release for Destructive Creations, a studio based in Poland, Hatred introduces the player as a misanthropic, mass-killing sociopath on a genocide crusade to kill as many human beings as possible. To say this game was controversial is a little bit of an understatement. The developers describe Hatred as a reaction to video game aesthetic trends, political correctness, lightness, vivid colour, and games as art. Which, in a way, I'm all for. You can't have light without some dark, but these guys just totally missed the mark. The sake of being disturbing and shocking for the sake of being disturbing and shocking doesn't really give you the precedence to create offensive material without the outline of some kind of wider message, which this game doesn't have. It's just continuous violent murder wrapped up in a crappy game. Its soundtrack is pretty decent though. I'll give them that. Coming in at number 2, Sad Satan. Now this game is a little bit of an enigma and pretty damn creepy nonetheless. First picked up on the YouTube channel Obscure Horror Corner in June 2015, it was initially thought to be a promotional stunt of the channel's popularity, which undeniably worked, but then things got a little bit real. Built on the Terror engine and developed by an unknown source, Sad Satan was reportedly downloaded to the internet through the Tor network via a deep web internet forum. It was referred to by a forum user known only as ZK, and then later released to 4chan by someone claiming to be the same user, claiming that people needed to witness the true version of the game. What exactly does it contain then? Well, not a whole lot of anything other than gore and other disturbing images from the dark places of the internet. The player walks down a monochromatic corridor as audio recordings of various murderers such as Charles Manson and Tsutomu Miyazaki are played. Real images of murder and beheadings pop up and creepy child statues follow the player's movement. It's bizarre, it's weird, and if someone did create it as a release to the deep web, then it's even weirder. And finally, at our number 1 spot, Manhunt 2. This list wouldn't be complete without the most controversially banned game in history. A sequel to Manhunt, which I've actually played and is a pretty bleak game, Manhunt 2 was released in 2007 by Rockstar Games. The game actually has a pretty great storyline, but it's the execution of its content that got the public all riled up. You play as Daniel Lamb, a patient at Dixmoor Asylum who wakes up with amnesia, who is accompanied by Leo Kasper, a sociopathic assassin who guides Daniel on his journey. Reception of the game was mixed, to say the least. In the UK, it caused outrage as the first Manhunt had been inaccurately connected to a murder case in 2004, and certain politicians were enraged at the thought of a sequel. As US Senator at the time, Hillary Clinton, amongst others, described the game as visceral and casually sadistic, and it was outright refused to be given a rating by the BBFC.
Number 5 on this list is Silent Hill Homecoming. Silent Hill Homecoming was initially not allowed to be released in a few countries and had to make a censored version because it was just too gruesome. What Culture says, the Silent Hill franchise has consistently offered up some of the most memorably unsettling imagery in the entire history of horror video games, and this reached a fever pitch with the release of 2008's Silent Hill Homecoming. When the game was being certified, Australia's Office of Film and Literature Classification objected to a horrific scene in which protagonist Alex and cultist Margaret Holloway wrestle over an electric drill, ending with either Holloway's face being drilled into a bloody mess or Alex getting drilled in the eye. Either way, not fun. The OFLC called this and several other mutilation sequences in the game high impact enough to refuse it a classification, effectively banning Homecoming from being sold in the country. Much the same approach was also taken in Germany. The game was eventually granted a release in both countries, however, once Konami created a censored version several months later in which these scenes were edited with new camera angles which concealed much of the explicit violence. Granted, many impatient fans had important imported the bloodier original version from abroad by that point, resulting in the German authorities eventually seizing a shipment of uncensored copies in November 2010. So yeah guys, this game was basically listed as too graphic and scary to be shown in some countries. Germany and Australia typically pull the plug on games sooner than other countries for gore and violence, but still, that one scene that's described there sounds pretty bad. Literally, however you spin it, somebody is taking a drill to the face. Comment down below if any of you have ever played this game before and what it was actually like. Do you think that it deserved to remain illegal?
In our fourth spot, we have the Blue Whale Challenge. So this is an online game that kind of reminds me of the movie Nerve. Now I say game with quotes because this should not be considered a game at all. Basically, it consists of a bunch of players doing real-life challenges. They have to record themselves completing these challenges in order to get a step closer to winning the game. Now, it starts off small, so you think it's all good and dandy, like maybe you'll get dared to watch a scary movie by yourself, or smoke marijuana, or sneak out your house in the middle of the night. But as you progress through the game, the dares intensify. You'll be asked to harm yourself. One of the tasks is to carve a picture of a blue whale into your arm with a knife. The final challenge is the most deadly. It asks the players to take their own lives. Now you may be thinking, wow, who would actually do that? But guess what? Worldwide, this game has influenced 200 players to kill themselves. The game is called Blue Whale because it goes with the concept of blue whales beaching themselves deliberately in order to die. The game is crazy, and obviously as a result of its risk, it's illegal to play in multiple countries such as Russia and India, where the death toll from this game was super high. In our third spot, we have Active Shooter. Just by the title of this game, you know it was highly controversial and problematic. I'm sure you can guess what it's about. Basically, you play as a school shooter, roaming around a school killing students and teachers. Thankfully, it was banned before it even got released. A number of school shooting survivors band together to stop the launch of this game. They managed to garner over 200,000 signatures. As a result, Steam pulled the game from their platform. Concerned parents and survivors were horrified. This game promoted violence and glorified killing. Now, the developer of this game came forward and said it shouldn't be taken seriously, and if people find the tendency to kill, then to reach out for help. Turns out that one of the men working on the game was, and I quote, a troll with a history of customer abuse, publishing copyrighted material, and user review manipulation. So he was fired after he tried to push this game. In our second spot, we have Blank Lay. I just want to preface this next point with a trigger warning. I'm going to be talking about some very serious subject matters. So this game is not actually called Blank Lay. I just censored myself because we can't say the word on YouTube for obvious reasons. So this game was released in 2006 and was highly controversial from the start. Basically, you play as a sex offender and you're tasked with going around and stalking women and then taking advantage of them by force against their will. Enough said. It's highly disturbing. After the player manages to successfully get at all three women, they unlock free play mode. And it's just super messed up. Like it seems like a reward for doing this. There's also several disturbing alternate endings. One of the endings, you impregnate one of the girls, and then you get killed days later by falling onto the train tracks and getting hit by a train. Or the second ending is if you use a certain position on one of the girls, she will end up breaking free and stabbing you to death. As a result of this very graphic and disturbing subject matter, this game was banned in multiple countries. It's also illegal to sell this game in Argentina, Indonesia, and New Zealand. And in our number one spot, we have Sad Satan. If you're a fan of horror games, then chances are you've heard about this game, and then the weird legend that's associated with it. So back in June of 2015, a YouTuber named Jamie from Obscure Horror Corner uploaded gameplay footage of him playing this game. According to him, he was sent a link to this game from a subscriber who found the game on the dark web. The game is a walking simulator. You just walk through this weird maze-like environment. Sometimes disturbing images flash across the screen, and the sound effects and dark atmosphere make it very unnerving. But apparently, this isn't even the real version of the game. Later, the subscriber who sent Jamie the link said there's more to this game and posted the true link to the game. This version, though, was very, very graphic. It showed real-life gory images like pictures of dead people from crime scenes or involving just really dark and NSFW pictures that are actually from the dark web. Some say that the game is too much for themselves and their computer ends up crashing as a result. Some who have played the game have claimed to feel dizzy and have gotten sick by it. Others claim that they would have dreams about them wandering through that same hallway. And then some people have reported that in their version of the game, when their character is attacked and their character's health lowers, their health in real life lowers as well. Now, the last part is probably not true, and that's part of the legend behind it, but who knows? Either way, no one should ever play the true Sad Satan game.